The stars streaked past the hull of the cruiser as it cut through the void, leaving trails of blue iron light in its wake. Sergeant Cale Ryn sat in the captain's chair, staring at the expanse of darkness. He had fought countless battles, survived ambushes, and led squads through the deadliest zones of space. Yet nothing in his years of service had prepared him for what awaited him now. The message had arrived hours ago, formal and unyielding. He was to report to the Supreme Command for a reward. A reward. Cale had received commendations before, medals and promotions, but something in the tone of this message was different. It was not the casual recognition of valor. It was official, serious, the kind of recognition that changed everything. When the cruiser docked at the orbiting station, Cale stepped into the towering halls of the command center. Alien architecture stretched around him, curves and angles that humans could not have imagined, colors shifting under the soft glow of lights that seemed to pulse like living things. Supreme Commander Vale, a towering being of silver scales and translucent wings, waited for him. "Sergeant Ryn," Vale's voice echoed, deep and melodic. "Your actions in the Battle of Orion's Edge have exceeded all expectations. Humanity has proven itself remarkable in courage and strategy. Few soldiers act with such clarity of mind under fire. For this you will receive a reward, something unique." Her eyes glimmered gold, intelligent and calculating. She did not step forward timidly. She walked with the confidence of someone used to command. Cale's brow furrowed. "Who is she?" "She will assist humanity in bridging relations with the Valen and ensuring lasting peace. I understand this situation may seem strange to you, but I am here by my own will. I have no obligation to obey blindly. My purpose is to observe, advise, and cooperate where necessary. Let us see if your actions live up to your reputation." She was not merely a diplomat. She was a strategist, and Cale knew that understanding her would be as challenging as any battlefield maneuver he had faced. Finally, Cale broke the silence. "Do you trust humans?" Cale smirked faintly. "I hope I don't disappoint." But it was not just her skills that caught Cale's attention. It was the way she moved, the way she thought, the sharp mind behind those golden eyes. Every interaction carried lessons, and Cale realized quickly that their partnership would be more than formal. It would be a meeting of equals. On the third day, alarms blared across the cruiser. Cale and Lyra were on the bridge instantly, analyzing the threat. A rogue faction of aliens, still loyal to the previous regime, had launched a surprise attack. Their ships were faster than expected, weaving through asteroid fields and evading standard tracking systems. Cale leaned forward. "They're testing us, trying to see if we've weakened. They are cautious but coordinated. They expect us to underestimate them." Lyra coordinated the ship's defense systems, predicting enemy movements before they happened. Together, they were a seamless unit, a soldier's instinct paired with alien intelligence. By the end of the fight, the rogue ships were either destroyed or fleeing. The cruiser had taken minor damage, but Cale and Lyra emerged victorious. As silence returned to the bridge, Cale turned to Lyra. "You made that look easy." It was about partnership. Lyra was a gift not because she was given, but because she chose to stand beside him, to challenge him, to help him grow as a soldier and as a human. That night, Cale sat in his quarters, staring at the stars through the viewport. Lyra had requested her own space, and he respected that. Yet he could not stop thinking about the events of the past days, the battle, the conversations, the unspoken challenges. He realized that this was more than a reward. It was an opportunity. To learn, to teach, to prove that humanity, even after war and hardship, could rise above suspicion and fear and build something stronger than mere survival. The next morning, Lyra approached Cale, carrying a small data pad with notes and schematics. "I have analyzed potential diplomatic opportunities in the sectors ahead," she said. "I believe we can prevent further conflict if we act strategically. Let's see what we can do." The universe stretched endlessly around them, full of danger, intrigue, and possibility. Cale knew that the coming days would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But for the first time in a long while, he was ready, not just to survive, but to thrive. And with Lyra as his partner, he felt that humanity's place in the galaxy was not only deserved, but inevitable. As the cruiser sailed forward, stars streaking past like ribbons of light, Cale allowed himself a small, confident smile. The war had ended, but the real journey was only beginning. And this time, he would not walk it alone. The cruiser glided silently through the outer rim of the Yalver sector, a stretch of space marked by asteroid belts and drifting remnants of abandoned colonies. Sergeant Kale Rin sat at the tactical console, adjusting flight paths and reviewing intelligence reports. Lyra stood beside him, her golden eyes scanning the readouts with uncanny precision. "You humans are predictable," she said almost casually. "Your fleets favor linear formations and your tactics rely heavily on brute force. It is efficient but vulnerable to deception. And you aliens are. But compatibility is earned, not assumed. Observation will continue." Their mission was simple in words but complex in execution. Negotiate peaceful terms with small alien colonies that had remained isolated during the war, many of which still held suspicion toward humanity. Kale understood that diplomacy required more than weapons and courage. It required patience, understanding, and occasionally humility. The first stop was the mining colony of Vesara 9. Orbiting a small, rocky planet, the colony's structures glinted in the dim light of a dying star. Communications were sparse, and Kale knew the inhabitants would be wary of humans, especially soldiers. When they docked, Lyra led the way. Her posture was confident, her movements precise, signaling authority without intimidation. Kale followed, his military gear drawing curious looks, but he kept his expression neutral. The colony leader, a tall alien with mottled green skin and multiple eyes, regarded them suspiciously. "You come after the war offering words and promises. Why should we trust you?" "We don't leave the remnants of war behind to rot. We rebuild, we negotiate, and we protect those willing to join peace. I don't ask for your trust blindly. I ask for a chance to earn it." You may judge his words by his actions, not only by his species. Lyra positioned herself strategically, whispering advice to Kale and the subtle telepathic link that certain aliens like her could establish. "Emphasize unity," she instructed. "Appeal to their desire for stability, not to fear of humans. Your knowledge, your skills, and your decisions are valuable. Together, we can ensure the next generation grows without the shadow of war." Kale learned to rely on Lyra's guidance. When a delegate attempted to provoke him with pointed accusations, Lyra whispered advice: remain calm, acknowledge their concern, and redirect toward common goals. Kale followed her instructions, and slowly the council's demeanor shifted. Suspicion turned into cautious interest. By the end of the day, the council agreed to cooperate, establishing joint operations between humans and Vesara 9 inhabitants to rebuild infrastructure and maintain security. Kale felt a quiet satisfaction, not from victory in battle, but from success in something more difficult: diplomacy. As they returned to the cruiser, Kale asked, "How did you know they would respond to that?" "Don't get used to it, I'm a quick study. Understand their motivations. Sometimes words are sharper than weapons." Hours of careful observation revealed the truth. The mercenaries were not ideologically driven, they were desperate, survivors of planets devastated by war, surviving by force because no one offered help. Kale frowned. "So they fight because they have no other choice. They respond to force because diplomacy failed them before, but they are not beyond reason." Landing on a barren moon near the mercenary base, Kale and Lyra approached the encampment cautiously. Lyra's voice carried authority as she addressed the group, explaining that humans offered resources and cooperation if they agreed to cease attacks on civilians. She spoke of fairness, shared benefit, and a future where survival did not depend on constant fighting. The mercenaries were skeptical, but Kale's calm demeanor and evident sincerity, backed by Lyra's knowledge, began to sway them. By the evening, the leader, a scarred alien named Torv, nodded. "You speak differently than the humans who came before. Perhaps we can try your way." Kale and Lyra continued their journey across multiple colonies, navigating cultural misunderstandings, political intrigue, and occasional skirmishes. Kale found himself learning faster than ever before how to interpret alien expressions, how to negotiate without threats, how to use strategy without resorting to violence. Lyra, in turn, seemed to enjoy the challenge. Kale was stubborn, unpredictable, and surprisingly creative in his thinking. She noted with quiet respect that humans were resourceful in ways no other species could match. When conventional tactics failed, Kale improvised, thinking outside the bounds of logic in ways that often turned disadvantage into advantage. One night, as the cruiser drifted past a nebula, Kale and Lyra observed the colorful clouds from the observation deck. Kale leaned against the railing. "You know, when this started, I thought this reward was, I don't know, just a token or a symbolic gesture. You see possibility where others see control. That is why I chose to accompany you, not because it was commanded, but because I trust your intentions." He laughed softly. "I never thought I'd be complimented by an alien diplomat, but I appreciate it." Humanity had fought and won battles, but the real challenge lay ahead. Maintaining that victory, building alliances, and proving that humans were not only strong, but honorable, clever, and capable of cooperation. As the cruiser sailed onward, stars streaking past like ribbons of silver, Kale felt something he rarely allowed himself: hope. With Lyra by his side, he had a partner, a teacher, and an ally. And together they could face whatever the galaxy threw at them, not as conquerors, but as humans who refused to be defined solely by war. The nebula passed, giving way to clearer space. Kale looked at Lyra, and for the first time he allowed himself to see the future, not only the challenges, but the victories to come. And for the first time in a long time, he believed that humanity's strength was not just in its weapons or courage, but in its ability to grow, adapt, and inspire trust even among those who had once seen them only as enemies. And so, with the stars as witnesses, Kale and Lyra began the next stage of their journey, forging alliances, solving conflicts, and demonstrating that humans, when guided by wisdom, honor, and compassion, were truly a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. The cruiser drifted into the outer edge of the T-Varan cluster, a maze of luminous gas clouds and fractured asteroid belts. Sergeant Kale Rin stood at the observation deck, arms crossed, watching the colored swirls of cosmic light ripple past the hull. Beside him, Lyra moved silently, her golden eyes reflecting the nebulae, analyzing every movement and fluctuation. "This sector is politically unstable," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Multiple factions claim authority here, but none have strength to enforce it. It is a powder keg." It was run by the Corval Syndicate, a mercantile faction that had profited from black market trade during the war. The syndicate was wary of humans, viewing them as unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Kale and Lyra's mission was to negotiate access to essential resources and ensure that the syndicate did not escalate tensions in the cluster. As they docked, the station's artificial gravity hummed beneath their feet. Lyra moved ahead, her posture commanding respect without intimidation. Kale followed, mindful of the subtle looks from alien crew members. He noticed how Lyra's presence alone seemed to alter behavior. No one dared to misbehave in her proximity. The syndicate's leader, a wiry alien named Grev with mottled gray skin and 6 thin arms, observed them from his elevated chair. "Humans," he said, voice sharp. "You come to negotiate. What makes you think we will cooperate? The question is whether you are willing to act on that knowledge. And what if we do not trust your species?" He reminded himself that humans had survived wars by understanding not only strength, but also morality and ingenuity. He trusted that these qualities could carry him through even the most delicate negotiations. Hours passed in discussions. Kale and Lyra navigated complex trade regulations, political rivalries, and lingering animosity from past conflicts. Lyra whispered advice at crucial moments, helping Kale phrase proposals in ways that appealed to the syndicate's self-interest while maintaining ethical integrity. At one point, a younger delegate, clearly nervous, raised a challenge. "You speak of peace, yet your species fought us for centuries. Why should we believe your words now?" "Because we are willing to act differently. War ends not because one side dominates, but because the other sees the value of coexistence. Humans are capable of learning from mistakes. We have fought, yes, but now we fight for a better reason, to protect and build, not destroy. Actions matter more than history." This was diplomacy at its finest, strategy, respect, and patience rather than brute force. Later, in the cruiser's briefing room, Lyra analyzed the data collected from the negotiations. "The cluster is stabilizing, but not entirely. There are factions that resent both humans and the syndicate. We must anticipate their reactions. So more trouble is coming." The next morning, a distress signal flashed across the cruiser's communication system. A colony on a nearby moon had been attacked by unknown forces. Kale's instincts went on high alert. "Prepare for immediate deployment. Lyra, I want your assessment." "We can neutralize the threat without escalating into war, if we act carefully." As they worked, Kale noticed the resilience of the colonists. Despite fear and loss, they continued to protect one another, following instructions and helping rebuild. It reminded him why humans fought not just for survival, but for community and hope. He realized that this mission, too, reflected human strengths, courage, ingenuity, and empathy. The scavengers struck again at dusk. Kale and Lyra anticipated their movements, setting traps and redirecting them toward isolated areas where they could be captured without harm to civilians. Kale marveled at Lyra's precision. She predicted enemy patterns, weaknesses, and likely retreats with near-perfect accuracy. When the attackers finally realized they were outmaneuvered, they surrendered. Kale and Lyra ensured they were treated fairly and safely transferred to authorities. Kale felt a swell of pride, not because of the victory, but because they had shown that strength and justice could coexist. Later, in the quiet of the cruiser's observation deck, Kale leaned against the railing, exhausted but satisfied. Lyra joined him, her eyes reflecting distant stars. "You did well," she said simply. "Your decisions saved lives and earned trust. That is the essence of leadership. That is why I am here, not as a reward but as a partner. Together, we accomplish more than either of us alone." It was a connection that could change the course of not just his life, but the future of human-alien relations. Over the next days, they continued their mission, traveling to various outposts and colonies. Each visit presented challenges, language barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and lingering suspicions from those who had suffered during the war. Kale began to notice subtle shifts in how people responded to humans when Lyra accompanied him. Her presence signaled fairness and authority, and humans acting with her guidance were often seen as trustworthy rather than threatening. One evening, as they charted courses through a particularly unstable sector, Kale asked a question he had been holding back. "Do you ever regret choosing to come with me?" "That's more than I expected to hear when this all started." The universe was vast, full of danger, mystery, and competing interests. Yet, for the first time, he believed that humans were not just survivors. They were builders, innovators, and peacemakers. With Lyra's guidance, he could navigate not only battles but also diplomacy, strategy, and moral challenges. As they drifted past a field of floating ice and shattered comets, Kale realized that their partnership was more than a mission. It was a test of character, a chance to prove that humans could shine not only in war but in wisdom, integrity, and cooperation. "Tomorrow," Lyra said softly, "we visit the Corellia sector. Political tensions there are high. It will test our ability to negotiate, predict behavior, and maintain peace under pressure." "That is what I hoped you would say." And with Lyra at his side, that hope had a chance to grow, shining brighter than any star. The Corellia sector was unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Stars clustered in tight groups, casting a faint iridescent glow across the hull of the cruiser. Floating cities orbited gas giants, their lights flickering like tiny beacons against the darkness of space. Yet beneath this beauty, Kale sensed tension, an invisible weight pressing against the calm of the cosmos. Lyra stood beside him in the observation deck, her golden eyes scanning the sector. "This area is politically fractured," she said softly. "Multiple factions claim governance, yet none hold true authority. Negotiations here will be delicate. Any misstep could trigger conflict. The Corellia sector will test both aspects of your abilities." Kale and Lyra arrived, escorted through skyways that seemed to defy gravity, their passage watched by citizens who had seen centuries of conflict and betrayal. In the council chamber, Kale felt the weight of history pressing on him. Leaders from multiple factions surrounded a circular table, their faces marked by suspicion and caution. Lyra moved with quiet authority, taking a position beside Kale that was both protective and advisory. Jervan, the senior counselor, spoke first. "Humans arrive after war and claim diplomacy. Why should we believe that you seek peace and not dominion? Humans fought and won, yes, but now we fight to preserve life and opportunity, not to subjugate." Murmurs filled the chamber as Kale watched. This was unlike any battlefield, no weapons, no explosions, yet the stakes were higher than any engagement he had survived. Failure here could ignite centuries of renewed conflict. Hours of negotiation followed. Kale and Lyra carefully navigated accusations, old grudges, and subtle threats. Lyra's insights were crucial. She whispered advice at precise moments, helping Kale phrase responses in ways that appealed to logic and morality simultaneously. When tempers flared, Kale remained calm, steadying both himself and the council. At one point, a representative attempted to intimidate Kale, citing human aggression during past wars. Kale's voice remained calm but firm. "We cannot erase history, nor should we pretend it never happened. But we can choose how we act now. Peace is earned by decisions today, not grudges from yesterday. I ask you to judge us by our choices, not our past. It was a small victory, but in a place like Corellia, even small victories mattered. Just as negotiations seemed to stabilize, alarms blared across the cruiser. Kale and Lyra returned immediately, analyzing incoming data. A coordinated strike was underway. A faction opposed to cooperation had mobilized mercenary ships to disrupt the peace talks and incite conflict. Kale clenched his fists. They're trying to ruin everything we've worked for. Her predictions allowed Kale to anticipate strikes, countermaneuvers, and minimize collateral damage. During the battle, Kale realized the full extent of their synergy. Lyra's alien foresight, combined with human ingenuity, created solutions neither could achieve alone. When enemy ships attempted to flank them through an asteroid field, Kale improvised, leading the fleet through narrow channels to neutralize the threat. Lyra predicted enemy retreats, guiding targeted strikes that forced them to surrender without unnecessary destruction. After hours of tense maneuvering, the mercenary threat was neutralized. Kale and Lyra ensured prisoners were treated humanely and transferred to authorities, demonstrating that strength could coexist with morality. Once the danger passed, Lyra turned to Kale. You acted decisively and justly. Many humans would have chosen overwhelming force. You chose wisdom, and it succeeded. You made the choice. I guided, you acted. That is leadership. Days later, intelligence reports indicated another potential threat. A secret faction plotting to overthrow Corellia's council entirely, seeking chaos to consolidate power. Kale and Lyra devised a plan to intercept and expose the conspirators before violence erupted. They traveled to a remote station on the edge of the sector. Lyra's analytical skills allowed them to trace communications, identify hidden operatives, and predict conspiratorial moves. Kale coordinated logistics, ensuring that any intervention would minimize harm and maximize effectiveness. The operation required stealth, strategy, and trust between them. Kale allowed Lyra to take the lead in interpreting alien behavior, while he handled the human tactical aspects. Together, they navigated complex traps, avoided detection, and reached the conspirators' base without alerting them. Once inside, Kale and Lyra confronted the faction leaders. Lyra's voice was calm, authoritative, and precise. Your actions will not succeed. Cooperation and peace are stronger than fear and deceit. Stand down, or you will face consequences measured by law and justice. One by one, they surrendered, recognizing that resistance would not only fail but could destroy their own interests. Kale felt the weight of responsibility lift slightly. The threat was neutralized not by destruction, but by understanding, careful planning, and the ability to anticipate actions before they occurred. He realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just courage, but the capacity to act wisely, ethically, and decisively. Later, aboard the cruiser, Kale and Lyra reviewed the results. You continue to impress, Lyra said. Your species is capable of achievements that even we underestimated. Integrity, courage, adaptability. Humans embody all these qualities, and you have proven it. You are the one who earns trust, builds alliances, and ensures peace. Over the following days, Corellia's sector began to stabilize. Kale and Lyra helped mediate disputes, implement cooperative trade agreements, and ensure that all factions understood the benefits of working together. Kale's respect for the alien diplomat grew, not only for her abilities, but for the trust she had placed in him. One evening, Kale and Lyra stood on the cruiser's observation deck, watching the twin suns of the sector set behind the floating cities. Do you ever worry that our work will be undone? Kale asked quietly. Lyra's gaze was steady. Any effort carries risk, but the strength of humanity is in resilience. You adapt, you learn, you act. That is why I trust you and why I remain at your side. Together, we are capable of more than individuals acting alone. With Lyra by his side, he had a partner capable of navigating not only the perils of war but the complexities of diplomacy, strategy, and ethics. The stars beyond the observation deck shimmered, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the challenges that still lay ahead. Kale clenched his fists, determination settling over him. Humanity had survived countless trials, but now they had an opportunity to prove their worth in ways that went beyond strength and combat. Tomorrow, Lyra said, her voice breaking the silence, we will return to Corellia to solidify the Council's new agreements. It will be challenging but necessary. The galaxy watches, Sergeant Rin. Our actions now will shape the future. Then we'll face it head-on. Humans don't back down from challenges, and we never act alone when it matters most. Let us show the galaxy what humans are capable of, when guided by wisdom and honor. With courage, intelligence, and integrity, they could stand alongside any species, earning trust, respect, and hope for the future. The mission in the Corellia sector had tested them both, but Kale felt ready for the challenges ahead. The conspiracies had been exposed, the factions persuaded, and the fragile peace secured, but he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was wide, full of unknown dangers and opportunities, and the future depended on those willing to act with honor, foresight, and courage. As the stars stretched into the distance, Kale looked at Lyra, her posture calm, her gaze unwavering. "We're ready," he said quietly. "We have always been," she replied. Together, they prepared for the next step of their journey, ready to face whatever the galaxy might bring, knowing that humanity, guided by wisdom, courage, and partnership, was capable of far more than mere survival. The Corellia sector shimmered under twin suns as the cruiser glided toward the central orbital platform. Kale Rin felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him more than ever. Every decision, every move had consequences for countless lives, not just human but alien. Peace had been fragile here, and whispers of dissent still lingered like shadows at the edge of every council chamber. Lyra stood beside him, her golden eyes steady, her presence as reassuring as the stars outside. "This is the final stage, Sergeant Rin. The factions you have mediated are unified, but not entirely convinced. Any misstep could unravel everything we've accomplished." Every faction had representatives here, including those who had once sought conflict. The room buzzed with tension. Kale felt the old, familiar pressure, the same he had known in battles across war-torn sectors, but this was different. Here, strategy alone would not win. Trust, patience, and moral clarity were equally vital. Jervan, the senior counselor, stood as Kale entered. His eyes were sharp, scrutinizing. "Sergeant Rin, your reputation precedes you, but the galaxy is not forgiving. Peace is fragile. How can we trust that you and your human allies will maintain it? We fight not to dominate, but to protect and build. That is our principle. That is what I bring to you today." The factions exchanged wary glances. Then, quietly, representatives began to nod, their body language softening. Kale could feel a subtle shift, the momentum of trust growing, fragile but undeniable. As the council began discussions, an urgent alert sounded across the cruiser's communication system. A fleet of unidentified ships had entered the sector at high velocity, moving directly toward Corellia's central platform. Kale's pulse quickened. "Lyra, get a read on those ships. Are they hostile? We cannot allow chaos to undo the work we've done." Kale led the human contingent, while Lyra managed the alien forces, integrating intelligence and predictive tactics to anticipate every move. The attackers struck quickly, trying to create confusion. But Kale's calm decisiveness and Lyra's foresight allowed them to counter every maneuver. Human ingenuity proved invaluable. Kale used unconventional tactics to outsmart the fleet, while Lyra's predictive algorithms minimized damage and guided precise defensive actions. Amid the battle, Kale realized that this fight was more than military strategy. It was a test of leadership, trust, and ethical decision-making. Every choice had to balance effectiveness with morality. The lives of civilians, soldiers, and diplomats all hung in the balance. By mid-battle, Kale identified the flagship of the opposing fleet, a massive, heavily armed vessel attempting to break through the defenses and reach the council chamber. Using a daring maneuver through a narrow asteroid field, he forced the flagship into a trap without firing a shot, leaving the attackers no choice but surrender. When the smoke of the skirmish cleared, the council members emerged safely. Kale and Lyra ensured the captured forces were treated humanely, their surrender secured through negotiation rather than destruction. Lyra placed a hand on Kale's shoulder, her eyes reflecting pride. "You acted with courage and wisdom. Many would have chosen total destruction, but you preserved life and trust. That is leadership worthy of recognition. Your willingness to act ethically, to think critically, and to adapt is what ensured success. I merely observed and advised. You earned every outcome." Humanity has not come to dominate, but to build bridges. We are capable of courage, intelligence, and integrity. Let this moment mark the beginning of a new era where trust, not fear, guides our actions. Kale felt a profound satisfaction, not a victory in war, but a victory in peace. Later, aboard the cruiser, Kale reflected on the journey. Lyra stood beside him silently, watching the stars drift past. "Sergeant Rin," she said softly, "you have proven not only to the Corellia sector, but to every civilization observing that humans are capable of greatness beyond combat. You have demonstrated integrity, wisdom, and moral strength. Courage, intelligence, compassion, these qualities define your species, and you exemplify them." But more importantly, he had realized that humanity's strength lay not only in courage or weapons, but in morality, creativity, and the willingness to build rather than destroy. Days later, the cruiser prepared to leave the Corellia sector. The Council formally recognized Kale and Lyra as representatives of peace, ambassadors whose actions had ensured stability. Delegates expressed gratitude, acknowledging that the combined efforts of humans and allies had prevented what could have been decades of renewed conflict. Kale and Lyra stood on the observation deck one last time before departure. "Do you ever wonder what lies ahead?" Kale asked quietly. Lyra's golden eyes reflected the stars. "The galaxy is vast, Sergeant Rin. Challenges will arise and new tests will come. But humanity has proven that it can rise to any occasion when guided by wisdom, courage, and morality. That is what we have forged." They encountered isolated colonies, rogue factions, and remnants of war, each time demonstrating the same principles: courage, intelligence, and integrity. The word of human capability spread across civilizations, not through fear, but through respect and the evidence of ethical action. One evening, as the cruiser drifted near a distant nebula, Kale reflected on everything that had happened. The battles, the negotiations, the conspiracies, they had tested him in every possible way. But the greatest lesson he had learned was simple. Humanity's strength was not only in what they could do, but in how they chose to act while doing it. Lyra approached, her gaze thoughtful. "You have proven that even in the face of danger and uncertainty, humans can rise above instinct alone. You balance courage with morality, action with foresight. That is why the galaxy recognizes you as a symbol of hope. Humanity, guided by honor and intelligence, is capable of achieving greatness across the stars." As the cruiser sailed onward, the nebula fading behind them, Kale realized that this journey had changed everything. The reward he had been given was never about ownership or dominance. It had been about partnership, understanding, and shared purpose. Lyra had chosen to stand by his side, not out of obligation, but because they could achieve far more together than apart. He glanced at Lyra, her eyes reflecting the infinite expanse. "The galaxy is waiting for humans to prove themselves," he said softly. "And you," Lyra replied, "have proven that humanity can rise to meet every challenge, not through fear, but through courage, wisdom, and integrity. That is the true power of your species." And as the cruiser accelerated toward distant systems, Kale allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future where humanity's strength, honor, and spirit would shine brightly across the galaxy. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time he knew that humans were ready to claim their place among them, not with fear, but with respect, courage, and unwavering integrity. The galaxy awaited, and Kale Rin, with Lyra at his side, was ready to meet it.